Good morning or afternoon or evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Patrick Cage. Just wanted to say we'll be starting in a few minutes. We're just waiting for everyone to show up. Hello again, everyone. Just wanted to say, again, we'll wait we're still a minute earlier, but we'll wait another 2 or 3 minutes and then start fairly promptly on time. We're just going to let a few more people show up to the webinar. All right, good day, everyone. We're now at about our official start time, 1:30 p.m. East Coast time, and I see we've got folks trickling in. So without further ado, we'll start the webinar. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Patrick Cage, and I'm with the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute. We are delighted to be able to host this informational session on the online graduate certificate in greenhouse gas management at George Washington University. And my role today is to be your guide through today's session. So I'll facilitate the question and answer section at the end of the webinar. And before we dive in, I'll go through a few logistical notes. First of all, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available after the session to participants, as well as posted to the program website where you can share it with colleagues. The webinar will last 30 minutes or so in terms of presentations, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. You can ask a question anytime by sending a private message in the chat box to me, the organizer, or you can use the question pane as well. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please contact the organizer privately through the chat box. Oh, next slide, there we go. So we have three wonderful speakers today. We have Rachael Jonassen, Dr. Michael Gillenwater, and Professor Marco Buttazzoni. Our first speaker will be Rachael Jonassen. She is the Program Director for the Greenhouse Gas Management Program at George Washington University. And without further ado, Rachael, over to you.
Thanks, Patrick. Hi, I'm Rachael Jonassen. As Patrick said, I'm the Director of the Greenhouse Gas Management Program at the George Washington University. I'm going to give you information about the administration of the certificate program in greenhouse gas management and how your online learning will work. And then two others related to our program will give you more details. Dr. Michael Gillenwater is Dean of the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute and someone I've worked with closely over the past few years as we developed this collaborative offering in greenhouse gas management, the first of its kind in a university graduate engineering program. Dr. Gillenwater will give you more details about the courses you will take in the program and how they prepare you for the rapidly growing field of greenhouse gas management. Professor Marco Buttazzoni is our other speaker today, and Professor Buttazzoni is one of 4 faculty within the program who will support your learning. And he offers a deep background in greenhouse gas management and associated issues in climate change. Professor Buttazzoni will give you more detail about the course he teaches in this program. That course is available online this spring semester beginning in mid-January. It is called Greenhouse Gas Management Assurance and Information Systems Design. Next slide, please. Let me first tell you a little bit about the institution where you will earn your certificate. The George Washington University was established by an act of Congress in 1821. It has 10 colleges and schools, including the School of Engineering and Applied Science, your home in the university. GWU hosts about 25,000 students, and about 14,000 of these are graduate students. So we are deeply steeped in graduate and professional education. Within the School of Engineering and Applied Science, there are 5 departments, and yours, Engineering Management and Systems Engineering, is one of the largest and oldest in the United States, with over 1,500 students. About 95% of our students are graduate students, and 65% are off-campus students, like you will be in this program. The certificate has been jointly developed and offered by both institutions, the George Washington University and the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute. We worked closely with GHGMI for several years to design the program and get it approved. The certificate program and the 4 courses that make up the program have been fully approved by the GW Faculty Senate and the administration. You will find them listed in the university catalog. They are 4 graduate-level courses of 3 credit hours each. The really good news is that all courses can be applied to graduate programs at GW, including the online programs that lead to a master's degree in engineering. Credits can be transferred elsewhere since GW is a fully accredited university. To create these courses, we worked with the GWE Design Shop, the university's experts in cinematography, audio editing, animations, graphics, and the art and science of learning. You'll experience really top quality videos as part of your learning. We also work closely with the Instructional Technology Lab, which hosts and supports the online learning system. Each course has an online librarian working directly with you and the instructor to ensure that you have full access to all the extensive online knowledge resources of the university. You'll use Blackboard as the learning management system, housing all the materials for the course. It has full capabilities for online learning, and I'll illustrate some of those in a minute. As part of your learning experience, you'll participate in a live synchronous session each week using Blackboard Collaborate. It gives you full two-way audio and video connections so you can see and be seen by others in the class. You can also use Collaborate yourself to set up chats with your fellow students and with your professor. We worked closely with the directors at GHGMI to select professors with the exact expertise and teaching ability needed for these courses. Besides myself, you will work with Professor Todd Delaney, Professor Mark Trexler, and Professor Marco Buttazzoni, who you'll hear from later. You can get more information about the faculty from our website. Normally, 2 courses will be available online per semester, so you can finish the certificate in just 1 year. Besides Professor Buttazzoni's course, you can also learn about GHG mitigation from Dr. Trexler in a course offered also this spring. We are now accepting applications for the spring semester, which begins in mid-January. The expected minimum level of effort for each course is 7.5 hours per week. Fees for these courses are reduced from those for campus courses by about 1/2 and are $995 per credit hour. For admission to the program, you must satisfy these requirements. First, you must have a suitable bachelor's degree, such as engineering, mathematics, or science, or a different bachelor's degree with appropriate work experience, which you must document. Second, you must have a B or better average in your junior and senior years and must submit a transcript. Third, you must also submit a statement of purpose indicating your career objectives and how you see the certificate fitting into those plans. Admission decisions are made on a rolling basis, and you will be notified within a few weeks of the admission decision. Your applications for spring is due by the end of this month. Now, there are 3 options for taking courses in the program. The first one, just apply for the full certificate, and most people choose that option. But option 2 would be if you're already admitted into a graduate degree program at GW, you can also sign up for classes with or without the certificate. And the third option is if you want to take one course, perhaps just try out the program before applying for the certificate, you can register as a non-degree student and sign up for a single course. Next slide, please. Now for the fun stuff. Let me tell you a little bit about your learning experience. Blackboard is a really rich learning environment, and you'll find a lot of resources packed into each course. You're seeing a round-the-clock look at a few of those here. Let's go clockwise from the top left. You'll use and construct wikis to share knowledge with your colleagues. Next picture, you see me in a lab to explain tougher concepts like radiative forcing. Video segments are usually about 5 to 7 minutes long. In the top center, a few students from our earlier class are discussing problems of bunker fuels and emissions from international shipping and methods to reduce them. You'll get access to many interviews with experts in each area. In the upper right, I'm interviewing world expert on solar energy. Blackboard hosts discussion boards, and we have one for each week of the semester where you are challenged on a particular topic and share your ideas and thoughts with others in the class. The spider diagram in the lower right shows a special tool Professor Trexler uses in his class called Climate Web. I know you'll find lots of uses for this in class and out. Because GW sits in the midst of the nation's government and international policy makers, you have special access to unique expertise. For instance, we collaborate with the World Bank's Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition, which is located just a few blocks away. At the bottom center, you see 3 experts from the Government Accountability Office speaking about challenges the federal government faces in mitigating greenhouse gas emissions in a video they helped us produce specially for this program based on a blockbuster report they just released. You'll encounter many similar videos. On the left side, you see the actual Blackboard system with its blue navigation panel and an example exercise. This is one of many exercises you can select in one of 5 lessons for each week of my course. I provide more exercises than you need to do, and you get to select the ones that work best for your learning style. For instance, if you like to learn by listening to videos, choose one of those. If you learn by reading a text, that's an option. If you learn by doing, create a video to report results. Finally, in the center, you see one of the ways we help you keep your learning on track as the course progresses. Each learning video contains stopping points shown by the green boxes at the bottom. They may point to additional resources or may quiz you, as illustrated here. We check your progress on these and work with you to clarify any points of confusion. You'll get instant feedback within the video and follow-up from your instructor. Well, I hope that gives you a flavor for the type of instruction you're in store for. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Gillenwater, who will tell you more about the content of the courses and how they prepare you for the global demand for experts in this field. Michael?
Thank you, Rachel. So my task is, as Rachel said, to start diving into the classes. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the context and background for how this certificate program came about. As Rachel mentioned, it's been a long time partnership and development process over several years of working with GWU University and Greenhouse Gas Management Institute together. Majority of what we do at the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute is the deep technical, what we call capacity building, professional development for experts in carbon management, in greenhouse gas accounting, and mitigation analysis. We have started many years ago with our first and still leading program, training the compliance review experts for the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and Kyoto Protocol. So these are the teams of experts that go in and essentially do compliance inspection for national level reporting for what we call greenhouse gas inventories. And that range of work has expanded over years of essentially helping companies and governments and nonprofits and other organizations develop this sort of technical expertise in greenhouse gas accounting and how to reduce emissions and how to do all this sorts of strategic planning for what we know is the in continuingly growing and pressing issue of climate change. But one of the key things we've always seen as part of the strategy is embedding this sort of technical training in university curriculum. And it's been a slow process, but as Rachel said, with this GW program is really now the flagship of that effort of embedding GHG management education at the university level, at the graduate level, at a technical level. One of the really interesting and key differences is, there are a lot of degree programs in sustainability and environmental studies and atmospheric science or at other universities around the world that'll teach you the science and political science and kind of business management aspects of thinking about climate change. But rarely do you see anything that gives you hands-on technical skills to actually, do work in government agencies and consulting firms to again, really have the technical skills to quantify emissions, how to do mitigation analysis, and how to, do the stuff that's really going to have an impact and implement changes. And so, like I said, that's rare. That this program is unique in that aspect of really being skills and technical focused which you see through the application requirements for needing to have some preferably technical background, either educationally or from work. Now, there's a question of, okay, great, wonderful. What does that look like, after I finish the certificate program, or if you go on toward a full graduate degree? Well, as we've seen, the politics and policies around climate change have come and gone, both in the United States and internationally, and with political changes. But what if you look at the longer time frame, what we've seen is a steadily ramping up of policymakers and the general public taking climate change more and more seriously, and more action being taken to really address greenhouse gas emissions. And I think we're really at a cusp of major change. Obviously, we've had the Paris Agreement negotiated, which now has all countries on the planet agreeing to taking on commitments, and with the exception now, unfortunately, of the United States. But that's a short-term blip, political blip. As you see in this map here, the number of regions and countries that have implemented or are implementing carbon pricing mechanisms. So these are policies from emissions trading to carbon taxes to other kind of regulatory things. So essentially, say to industry and businesses, we are going to price in, and we're going to essentially put the economy on a pathway toward reducing emissions. And along with that, and you're only going to see this map fill out more with time, and probably relatively quickly. Along with that, all these organizations, including governments, are going to need the technical experts to go in and understand, quantifying emissions, doing the analyses to figure out how to reduce emissions, to bring in the cost element of what's economic, what are long-term investments that make sense when we begin to really to price greenhouse gas emissions into the ways of doing business. Next slide. So let me now step through the essentially content of the program. Obviously, we will give you the context in terms of climate change policy, in terms of climate change science, in terms of all those kind of fundamentals to kind of understand how to navigate this world, both domestically and internationally. Everything from obviously the big pictures about the international agreements, but also down to just the mechanics of different pollutants and how that interplays with business economics. But then we get into the real unique value add here, which is developing methodological skills on how to estimate and quantify emissions with this particular focus on energy-related activities. And you'll see there a special focus on EE, which is energy efficiency, and RE, renewable energy, because those are going to be, there's lots of greenhouse gas sources out there, from livestock to industrial sources, from refrigeration and things like that. But we know the dominant player is carbon dioxide, and the dominant source of that is our energy use. And so that transition over years to renewable energy and more energy efficiency is going to be a driver for that. So understanding both how to quantify emissions and then how to do that kind of analyses for mitigation, which includes both the environmental side of what are the environmental impacts, how much can we reduce emissions with different technologies and different approaches, but also the cost side of how do you bring that into the financial analysis for a company, for a jurisdiction like a state or a city or even a country. And then how does that interface with this increasingly complicated and expanding network of policies and regulations, and how do businesses fit into that evolving landscape? And then we even go a step further with the curriculum, which is how does that play out in terms of data management? So we know companies and organizations are now really driven by data, big data, and managing data to drive corporate decision making, for example. and then reporting out that to shareholders, to stakeholders, to governments. So how do we begin to take all this analyses and data collection we're doing around emissions, integrate that with corporate and organizational processes, and embed it in the organization so it's actually actionable data. And then even the next step with that is, how do you do assurance? How does a company or an outside auditor go in and assure that the quality of that data and the accuracy of that data is there? From everything from just having some confidence in your numbers to essentially submitting legal, regulatory, quality data to governments to comply with rules and laws. Next slide. So here are the, let me stop real quick. One of the options with the program is Greenhouse Gas Management Institute also administers the Carbon Management Journal. It's an academic peer-reviewed journal. It's the kind of leading publication for these sorts of applied, implementation-oriented climate change research and practitioners. And so for those of you that choose to do a full certificate project, you can turn that into a peer-reviewed journal article and submit it to the journal for publication, which of course will have to go through a full peer review process. Next slide. So here are the courses that we've kind of been bouncing around and talking about. You've heard basically what's included in them. The first course, which Rachael teach, gives you all that context and background to really understand the landscape of climate change policy and science. And then the next course, taught by Professor Todd Delaney, goes into the greenhouse gas quantification, measurement, all the methodologies, and all the kind of reporting frameworks for really understanding where the emissions are coming from. And then the third course, taught by Professor Mark Trexler, goes into the essentially the mitigation analysis, how to understand project by project, to analyze the costs and benefits of doing mitigation. How does that fit into the landscape of regulations and markets? And importantly, how do companies assess the risks around all these issues? Because as we're increasingly seeing, corporations and other organizations are realizing that there's a real long-term strategic issue here from climate change, both from the impacts of climate change and also from the implications for regulation and their need to address that. And then lastly, the course that Marco teaches and will speak on next, on the GHG information management systems and how to do assurance on that data. And so as Rachael already mentioned, all of these courses are for credit, from an accredited university, and can be fed into a master's or even doctoral degree program at the School of Engineering and Applied Science, should you choose to go on to that next step. And with that, let me pass it over to my colleague, Marco Buttazzoni, to talk about this fourth course on assurance and IT systems.
Thank you very much, Michael. Before we start with the course itself, I'd like to briefly introduce myself, mostly to give you a sense of where I come from. I grew up in a small region in the northeast of Italy, and then I studied my first degree is in economics, and I studied in Milan. But then my first job was in London, in the UK, and for a number of years I worked there as a management consultant, mostly in the telecoms, for telecom and IT companies. But then at some point, I found that I was spending most of my free time reading about environmental issues and climate change issues and energy issues. And so I decided to leave my job, and I moved to the US, where I did a master's in environmental management. And from there, I started to, after the master's since 2004, I started to work mostly as a consultant on climate change and greenhouse gas management. And so since then, basically, I worked a bit with NGOs, but mostly with the private sector. I'm also leading the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute Software Evaluation Program. But basically, my main point, I guess, of this story is that I did spend some time in academia throughout my career and my life, but I spend most of my time in the business world, working with companies. And so with this course, I hope to be able to provide you, the rigor and the analytical tools that come from an academic environment, but also I hope to give you a sense of how the issues are then, how they play out in the real world with companies, how companies try to address these issues, what sort of problems they come up with, what solutions they try to implement. And so this is basically my overarching theme, I guess, into the course. If we go to the next slide, we'll see basically the course itself, as Michael already pointed out, tries to address two main questions. The first one really is about the information systems that companies put in place to collect data, analyze those data, report, get insight about the data, manage their progress towards targets, and so on. So this part is really about the system and the softwares that companies are using. How do they do it? And the second part is more about the issue of trust. How do we make sure that we can trust the data and the reports we're giving about greenhouse gas emissions? What sort of processes do we have in place to double check and look at the accuracy of what we're given? So, and during the course, if we move to the next slide, we'll be going through the process, the steps basically that companies follow when they think about those issues. And those steps to some extent are similar for both topics, because companies start with think about the issue they want to address, basically do some homework to understand what the problem is, and basically they prepare, and then from there they plan, they make a plan on how they want to address the problem, and then from there they go about thinking about solutions, and then they try to implement the solutions, and then they use whatever system they come up with, and then they start the circle again. And verification, assurance processes are very much similar. You need to do some homework before you plan the verification itself, and then from there you can go into execution and completion and reviews and so on. So the course spans over 14 weeks, and the weeks to some extent follow these steps. We'll be to some extent pretend that we're companies that are dealing with either information systems issues, or we are verifiers that look at verification assignment, and we go through the steps that a typical company would go through, or a typical verifier would go through. And if we move to the next slide, as I said, each week, goes through these steps, and during the week we'll have, mini lectures that I will be providing along with readings. But also we've been lucky that we have a number of interviews with business people that are actually working on these topics on a day-to-day basis. So we're able to get the perspective from Bloomberg, for example, HP, Procter & Gamble, World Bank, C-Venture. Michael Gillenwater also will be one of the interviewees, talking about the verification history and the processes. And also we have Green Seal. So these people were extremely generous with their time, and they spent between 1 and 2 hours talking to us and sharing their perspective on both the information system issue and the verification and assurance issue. And I think these interviews are extremely interesting because they provide a real sense of how it is like for a company when they are looking at these problems. And sometimes things go well, sometimes they find problems, sometimes they have to figure out ways to solve a difficult issue. And so hopefully during with these interviews we'll get a good sense of all these things and how it really plays out in the real world. And so hopefully this will help us, going from a methodology or a guideline or a standard that, when you read it, is black and white, seems relatively clear and straightforward, but when you try to apply it in the real world, you are dealing with, a lot more complexity. And these interviews will help us understand some of those complexities. If we go to the next slide, each week then, in addition to the interviews and the lectures and the readings, have an active learning component. The idea here is that we'll try to, basically we'll play the part of a sustainability manager or verifier and do the work that sustainability manager would do at work, or that verifier would do at work. So we'll do things like, preparing a work plan, or performing a risk assessment for a verification, or developing a sampling plan, or looking at what are the software requirements for a specific company setting, and what are the checklists that we could be using to assess if a software is right for us or not. Part of this will also work with the real GHG management software. We will have access to the Ecometrica software, and through that software we'll look at how data is uploaded into a GHG software, how a company is set up in the software, how you can create reports, graphs, extract those reports, create dashboards, and so on. So the idea here is that these exercises are very hands-on. So we'll do the exercises, and then we'll discuss them together. We'll comment and try to learn from each other based on the experience in doing it and using the software that we will be using into the course. So overall, I hope that the course will be interesting to you through these various components that I mentioned and through the active learning. And as I said, my goal is to get something to you that's also practical and that will help you understand some of the issues that companies work on, and to prepare you for addressing those issues yourself when you leave the course and when you are working for a company or for an NGO or for any organization that deals with these issues. And I think this is it for my presentation. I think now we're moving to question and answers, and I leave the word back to Patrick.
Great. Thank you, Rachel, Michael, and Marco. This has been a terrific overview of the program. And the most important thing now is we have some time for attendee questions. We had a number of questions that came in during this session. So to get us started, Rachel, the first question is for you, which is, what is the approximate cost of this program? And is the cost the same for people inside the United States and outside the United States?
Sure, thanks, Patrick. Always a big question, the cost of the thing, and that's one of the things we've worked real hard with the university to get at the lowest possible level. Actually got in a little trouble with the university of getting the price down so far. We're charging $995 per credit hour for the 4 courses in the program. So each course is a 3 credit hour course, and you can do the mathematics. The information is also laid out in the website that you see in front of you, listed there. So you're welcome to take a look at that, and you should get all the information you need for the application process on that too. The question about is it the same for people inside the United States and outside the United States? Yes, we're not discriminating one way or the other on that. So the same prices apply throughout, whether you're inside the United States, whether you're within the university or outside the university, or inside the United States or in another country.
Great, thank you. Marco, next question is for you, which is, you've described briefly the greenhouse gas training software. Is this software package dependent on a particular operating system? And I think anything you could share about the sort of technical specifications of the software for learners would be helpful as well.
Yeah, yeah. This software we will be using during the course is a software as a service type software. So what you really need is an internet connection, and you'll be provided a password, and you'll be able to log on. So I guess the bottleneck will be how fast your internet speed is, but the software shouldn't be very heavy. There are not many videos or anything in it. So really, that software can be used by anyone with an internet connection. So if you are able to go onto Blackboard, you will be able also to use the software itself. For the course, we'll also be using normal Microsoft Excel or Word documents. So you will be needing those two packages. But my understanding is GW, if you don't have access to those packages, through GW you can get Office 365 for free, I think. So that's something you probably want to double check with the IT department. But my understanding is if you happen to be working from a computer that does not have Microsoft Office, you can have access to it through GW.
Great, thank you. Next, Michael, we have a question for you. I think this is a big one for a lot of our webinar participants. One attendee has asked about the chances and opportunities for getting a job in the greenhouse gas management field after taking the course. I hope you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's the exciting, but also how would you say, challenging aspect of it is, things are developing quickly and changing. New policies are happening all the time. Companies are, in many ways, still coming to terms with what climate change means. Obviously, it varies a lot by jurisdiction, depending on the country you're in and the part of the world you're in. What is your interest? For example, are you interested in working, in government, on policies and regulations, versus, are you, primarily interested in working in the, business industry, helping them, understand their emissions, how to be more efficient, with energy and engage in, in terms of, planning and really, getting ahead of the issue by, helping the government or the company figure out its carbon footprint and start to actually do things about it. Then there's also another side with respect to the nonprofit or advocacy angle. I assume most people, enter this program aren't primarily focused on joining it because they want to go march in the street, although that there can be some of that too. But they're really interested in providing kind of technical expertise and that sort of professional support to addressing this issue. And it's one of the things I didn't touch on a great deal earlier, but that this is really, and the reason why I think many of my colleagues that are here on this webinar with me, the other panelists, got into this issue is because it's sort of a I don't want to say unique, but a rare field of practice where you get to combine something that's technically interesting and exciting, that has sort of global significance, and something that you can really make a difference on, and really effectively, at the risk of sounding cliche-ish, change the world, or help change the world in a ways that make it livable for future generations. So it's that combined calling that I think makes it somewhat special. Now in terms of getting a job, I laid all that out. Things are just as I showed with the carbon pricing growth. There are political ups and downs. So if you want to, for example, get a job with government, obviously you need to be in a jurisdiction where the government's taking climate change seriously. But those things changes, and I can, as an objective, scientist of sorts, or at least someone with scientific training, I can guarantee you, we are at that point where things are going to flip soon on climate change, and a lot of countries are taking it seriously, but the level at which business and governments have to take climate change seriously is on the verge of having to flip majorly, because we are really seeing concrete, serious impacts now of climate change. The climate system is being disturbed, and this current political moment, this is going to flip, and there's going to be I don't want to guarantee an avalanche, but like a really seriously huge demand for taking this issue even more seriously than many are now. And that's going to mean they're going to be looking for who really knows how to deal with climate change at a implementation technical level, not just versus just kind of talking about how it's important.
That was great. Thank you, Michael. Next up, a question for Rachael again. Rachael, I'm synthesizing a bit here, but we've had a number of questions just about time commitment and scheduling, as well as specifically whether it's possible to take any of the courses during the summer. Could you speak to sort of how the program is, how the courses are programmed time-wise?
Sure. Yeah, and thanks. Good questions, and lots of sort of sub-questions related to that. So I can relate to your interest on that one. We have the 4 courses. Our goal is to offer a minimum of 2 courses each semester, so that a person can complete the certificate program within 1 academic year. We'll have the course, Marco's course in the spring, and also the course by Mark Truxler, Dr. Truxler, who teaches about greenhouse gas mitigation. In the fall, this past fall, we offered 2 courses, my course and Dr. Delaney's course. And so you see that those who got into the program and were taking it in the fall will be able to complete their certificate by the end of spring. We do not now currently have any definite plans to run a summer program, but that's entirely possible depending on what people's needs are and the total number of potential enrollees. So we're very much open to that possibility. One of the things we talked about with all the faculty as we got started in this is their willingness to be able to teach every single semester. And all have agreed to be able to do that. And so, yes, it is potentially possible we could offer something in the summer, but it is not currently on the books or planned to offer one this summer. In terms of the level of commitment on this, for each course, the university policy for online courses, so I'm quoting from the policy here, is a minimum of 7.5 hours of student involvement each week. That, for those of you who have had courses, especially at the graduate level already, probably are thinking, wow, if I did something for only 7.5 hours, that'd be great. And a lot of you who are working know you put in a lot more time than that. So 7.5 hours commitment is the guidance we give to our faculty in developing the assignments and the interactions during their particular course. So that's the closest I can give you. Each faculty person will probably be able to give guidance at the beginning of the semester for their own expectations, but you can be sure that it's going to be a minimum of 7.5 hours, and faculty probably will try to keep it to a reasonable level, very close to that. Any other aspects to that question that I missed, Patrick?
No, I think that was a great overview, and of course, to our listeners, if anyone has follow-up questions, you're welcome to enter them into the chat box there in terms of time commitment and scheduling. Rachael, we've got a few other administrative type questions that I think you're the right person to handle. Next up is about prerequisites, and I suppose if there are particular prerequisites besides those discussed so far for any of the courses. This might apply to Professor Marco Buttazzoni as well in terms of his course, which is the last in the series.
Sure. Yeah. In prerequisites, I think the questioner might be thinking sort of less formally. I went through the prerequisites for admission to the program, and so those are, in essence, the prerequisites. Ideally, if you're taking this set of courses, you might want to think about the timing of each. If you wanted to get through in a single year, like I say, you can take what we call, the first and second course. That would be mine and Dr. Delaney's, and then you would take the third and fourth course, which would be Marco's and Mark Truxler's. But there's no limit on that, depending on your own ambition, what prior knowledge you might bring into that, and your discussions with the faculty person themselves to make sure you have they're okay to enter the program. In general, it's good to have some background in, at the graduate level and things, if or say be prepared to work at the graduate level. These are graduate classes, and so we're not expecting you to have a degree at the graduate level or anything like that, but be at the level of maturity in your education and your professional development and your commitment that you're ready to work at the graduate level. And then I guess from there I'll turn it over to Marco maybe to expand some on for his own particular course.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I think as a segue, basically, to me, it will be, for my course, it is useful if the students already have, obviously, an understanding of what greenhouse gas management is. So, particularly, the second course is quite useful for the people that then try to come into my course. Having said that, if you're working or if you already have read a lot in your spare time, or if you're really just interested in my course, talk to me. We, as professors, we have the right to some extent to accept students based on their specific need and situations and desires. So if you feel that you have enough of the background to start focusing on the information system side of greenhouse gas management and on the assurance side of greenhouse gas management, and if you're not sure, just send me an email and we can discuss. So, it does help. The other courses that are offered before mine are logical courses to take beforehand, but obviously, depending on your situation, it may not be a requirement.
Great, thank you. Next up, Rachel, this is a fairly specific question, which is, are there any exceptions for international practitioners who don't have TOEFL or IELTS, but are interested in taking the course?
Thanks, Patrick. For those who are not familiar with that, the question is really about demonstrating your ability to handle instruction in the English language. And those scores are, the accepted method of demonstrating that, so they're transferable around the world once you've taken those exams and got your scores. The university expects that in its graduate programs, and so if you're applying for a master's degree or a PhD at GWU, you would definitely need to submit your TOEFL scores or IELTS scores. And of course, our instruction is in English, and so you want to make sure that you're able to benefit to the maximum from the instruction. You want to make sure that your English is prepared for that level of complexity and all. So I think buyer beware, you would want to convince yourself that you have the English capability, and in doing so, you should be able to convince us. If you're, for some reason, not able to take the TOEFL scores, if you want to get in this coming semester and don't have time to schedule a TOEFL score and get it to us, talk to us about that. It's usually pretty easy for us in a conversation with you to judge your ability at English, and you may be able to submit some written documentation, some examples of your writing that would convince us that you're ready. So this is not a bar to keep you out of the program. Rather, it's a metric to use to make sure you yourself are going to benefit the most from the instruction that we're offering. And I hope that answers your question on that. But if you have a specific question or specific issue on it, please feel free to contact me about that.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Well, with that, we've covered all the questions that have come in so far. So we'll close our webinar. I want to thank our panelists today and to thank all of you for carving out the time, either during your day or in your evening or morning, to learn more about this program. You will receive a copy of a recording of this webinar and a follow-up email. And similarly, in the event that I missed any questions that came in, or you have any additional follow-up questions, please do not hesitate to email it to Rachael. Her contact info is in the chat box as well as should be on the screen, and she would be more than happy to answer all inquiries. We look forward to your enrollment and have a great rest of your day. Thank you again.
Thank you, Patrick.